The Legend of Zelda series is one that captured the hearts of gamers all across the world. It has been claimed as one of the best franchises in video game history, and personally my favorite. And almost every game in the series has been met with extremely positive reception, with maybe only a couple outliers. There maybe is truly only a couple other video game franchises that has the same amount of impact on the industry. The series has produced some of the greatest levels, characters, music, and games ever made. It has single-handedly changed how we play video games, not once, not twice, not even 3 times, but 4 times. No other franchises has done that. And what other way to celebrate than count down my top 5 favorite Legend of Zelda games? I would have done a top 10, but I know I would have just been writing and the video would have ended up 45 minutes long, and I'd want to walk into traffic from editing so much. So let's start off with number 5. This one might come to a surprise for some people. Yes, I get that the first couple hours of Twilight Princess are ridiculed by many people for being a gigantic pain in the ass. Trust me, I hate herding goats as much as the next guy, but after the first couple hours, you will find one of the most finely tuned Zelda experiences out there. Twilight Princess was on a mission to provide the grandest Zelda experience yet. Coming off Wind Waker, some fans were craving a more developed or adult Zelda game, and Nintendo fans heard their cries. Just look at the E3 reaction. Still, that is probably the best E3 moment ever, if you don't want to count this. Aesthetically, Twilight Princess is the exact opposite of Wind Waker. The game is dark, gritty, and creepy. The soundtrack is somber and depressing, and it couldn't make me happier. I love that they went in the exact opposite of Wind Waker. Maybe it's just me, but my favorite atmosphere in any type of entertainment usually is darker and somber tones. So it already checked that box for me. But what separates this one from other Zelda titles is the phenomenal dungeons. Holy crap, the dungeons in Twilight Princess were fantastic. Yes, there were your typical Zelda dungeons like the forest, fire, and water dungeons, but those don't got shit on Arbiter's Grounds, where you get one of the coolest items in the series, the spinner. Or Snow Peak Ruins, a mansion on top of a snowy peak. I mean, the Temple of Time is a dungeon. If you told 7-year-old me that I would be playing through the Temple of Time in a future Zelda game, I would have completely lost my shit. But having cool sounding dungeons doesn't make a good Zelda game. They have to actually be fun to explore and solve. And Twilight Princess checked that box as well. Each dungeon is phenomenally designed with different puzzles to solve and bosses to defeat. Take Lakebed Temple for example. Most of the dungeon you are solving a gigantic puzzle by shifting the flow of water and rotating a set of stairs to get to new rooms. It can be a real brain teaser and left me pretty satisfied after solving it. Twilight Princess is a gigantic Zelda game and one of the most epic adventures in the whole series. By diving right into the dark and gritty tone and providing probably the best set of dungeons in the franchise, it sits at number 5 on my list. Just because I said I loved a dark tone doesn't mean I don't love a whimsical one as well. Wind Waker is one of those games that just puts a smile on your face. The cartoonish animation and graphics is one of the few games that stand the test of time with overall looks. The HD Wii U version is absolutely breathtaking, but the original GameCube one still is stunning. Never before had a vast open ocean looked as good as this. Now, just because a game looks good doesn't mean it is good. Because Hyrule was flooded and the whole land is covered by water, you must sail from island to island, which can get pretty boring at some points. But luckily in the Wii U version, this was rectified by giving you a faster sail. And also, it helps that almost every aspect of the game makes up for this. The fantastic new characters introduced are a joy. The combat system was and still is one of the best in the series. Now Link can let loose a fury of combo attacks and counter enemy attacks. Something that really wasn't seen in the series before. You can even pick up dropped enemy weapons and use them to your advantage. The soundtrack is one of the best of all time. I mean, just listen to this at the title screen. You cannot tell me that doesn't blow you away. And finally, Wind Waker has my favorite item set in the series. The grappling hook was a wonderful new addition that added a new way to traverse areas and also another way to steal rupees and items from enemies. The Deku Leaf was used in fun ways to solve wind-related puzzles. It also seemed to pave the way to a new and important item introduced in Breath of the Wild. Wind Waker was frowned upon by many critics at its first reveal. It was criticized for its cartoonish looks, but what do you know, it turned out to be one of the best games in the series, and ironically, probably put a smile on mostly everyone's face who played it. A Link to the Past changed how we played video games. It changed how we looked upon our adventures through a controller. Now, to get this out of the way, my first console was the N64. My first dive into the gaming world was in 3D, so I'm not going to tell you about this wonderful childhood experience I had with A Link to the Past, at least with this game. I didn't even play it until late high school. So when I say that this is one of the greatest games of all time, I mean it with no nostalgic vision attached. It truly is that good. The pure brilliance of these dungeons and overworld and bosses are absolutely incredible, because it was really their first go-around with this aesthetic. The first Zelda game on the NES was groundbreaking for video games, but really it wasn't as impactful as A Link to the Past. Yes, the first game was the first to introduce a big overworld and dungeons, but the depth of puzzles and unique item variety were not very prevalent. The original was a big jump, while A Link to the Past was like a rocket to the freaking moon. Link now had more freedom than ever, while also not being so obtuse. The game just has a wonderful way of pointing you in the direction you need to go. Yes, there are literal markers on your map showing you destinations for dungeons, but along the way there are plenty other items to collect and places to explore. And while there are markers guiding you to dungeons, sometimes it's not as straightforward as you think. Many times getting into a dungeon involves some exploration around the area. A Link to the Past paved the way for the series, quite literally. It created that Zelda formula we fell in love with, and all of the following Zelda games seem to follow with. Without A Link to the Past, we wouldn't have this wonderful series, and hopefully all Zelda fans appreciate what this game created. Ocarina of Time is one of the most influential games of all time. It is the highest rated game ever on Metacritic, and you will find this at the top of many gamers' favorite games, not just favorite Zelda games. I think this is partially from the transition from 2D to 3D. 3D environments give off such a more immersive atmosphere compared to their 2D counterparts. Early gaming was heavily based on imagination. Just take this famous art from the original Zelda. This is what the first game made many players imagine what they were experiencing. Running from screen to screen was the most exploration ever seen in most video games at that point, and that was capturing in its own way, but this feeling was solely based on your imagination. Now jump over to Ocarina of Time, and it had the power to put you in that exact same situation in the artwork. I will never forget running out of Kokiri Forest and experiencing this vast field to explore, even if it was a little barren. I made my way and saw this huge volcano off in the distance and thought, wow, I wish I could go to that. And now you can. Almost everything in the game that you can see you can go to. Now Ocarina did have some restrictions. The game was very linear, meaning that yes, you might see that volcano off in the distance, but you can't go there now. You have to wait for that section in the story. But that is more detrimental to the time it was being developed, so I won't be too hard on that. One way I like to judge my enjoyment of a game is how memorable my experience with that game was. Or simply, will I still be thinking of this game later in my life? Now this can be taken in many different ways by other people. To some people, the story and character development of The Last of Us will leave a long-lasting impact. Or to another person, their fondest gaming memories were playing Halo 2 online with a group of buddies. And all of that is great, but to me, my experience with Ocarina of Time is my fondest gaming memory. I remember being terrified of the Skulltulas inside the Deku tree as a child, and I honestly think this is where my fear of spiders has developed from. I remember the first time pulling the Master Sword and being mesmerized when I traveled 7 years in the future. I remember scaling Ganondorf's castle, and of course I remember the first time beating the game. Ocarina of Time can be summed up into 2 words: masterpiece and unforgettable. Ocarina of Time was the grandest adventure to ever release at that point, and it captured the hearts of so many players, including myself. I will review the game at some point in my series Remember That Game, and it will be a long review because it is such a special game to me. Ocarina of Time is my favorite game of all time. Now you might be thinking, wait, this is only number 2 on the list, so how is it your favorite? Well, something can be your favorite, but technically not the best. Whataburger is my favorite place to get a cheeseburger, but is it really the best cheeseburger? So this leads me to number 1. Breath of the Wild is the greatest open world game ever created. At least I think so. No game world has been perfectly crafted for exploration like this one has. Most open world games are technically just linear games set in an open world environment. You often get a quest and a little line or dot on the minimap directs you exactly where you need to go. Now technically yes, Breath of the Wild is in the same boat there with its main story. But this is technically totally optional. You don't have to ever go to any of those marks to free the divine beast if you don't want to. In fact, I think along with many other people, it is objectively the worst part of the game. Now it's not bad because nothing in this game is really bad. It's more of a hiccup in an almost perfect game. But what is truly special about this game is that its main story is not even what the developers wanted you to get so invested in. Breath of the Wild's main hook is its massive and vigorously designed world. And when I say vigorous, I freaking mean it. Breath of the Wild is absolutely huge, but it was designed in a way so that from every spot you are standing at, something catches your eye. It could be a tower with some treasure on top of it, a hill with some bokoblins just hanging out, or it could be a shrine off in the distance, which I think was an ingenious idea. Think about that. Literally, this huge world always has something that grabs your attention from wherever you are standing, and that is truly incredible. Another thing that Breath of the Wild does is that it breaks those chains from previous Zelda games that were holding you back. No more locked areas, not even the final boss. Go anywhere and everywhere right after its brilliant tutorial section at the plateau. It is truly all up to you because they give you all the items you will use for the entire game in the first couple hours. No more backtracking because you don't have a certain item. Everything can be solved or passed right from the get-go. There are so many things that I could talk about for hours and hours, such as the combat, the shrines, or literally climbing everything, but I will leave that up to when I eventually review the game and remember that game. It is a masterpiece in so many ways, and it will be studied by game designers for a long time. It changed how many people play open world games. Breath of the Wild is the best Zelda game ever created and one of the best games ever made. Thanks for watching. Let me know what your favorite Zelda games are and why in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to see more of my content. I make weekly gaming news videos that release every Friday that recaps the news from the week along with some of my thoughts. Or check out my last review where I reviewed Blossom Tales, which is basically just a link to the past. I'll see you next time.